Welcome back. This is the Patrick Coffin Show. I am Patrick Coffin, continuing our series on transgenderism with Hudson Byblow. Hudson is a speaker, an author, and consultant who addresses those third-rail, thorny issues facing Christians and others today. His personal background includes gender dysphoria, cross-dressing, same-sex attraction, and his hard-won insights have made him a hit with audiences in Canada and the U.S. I know this firsthand. Hudson, so great to see you, my friend.
Pleasure to be back. Thank you, Patrick.
I still remember you and I had a correspondence before you came down to San Diego when I was working at Catholic Answers, and you gave a sort of a personalized seminar to our apologist department, of which I was a kind of a secondary. I was like the caboose onto the department. And what impressed me about the way you got the message across about same-sex attraction did not water down the gospel. It did not go outside the teaching of the Catholic Church and the Catechism, but you shared practical ways of telling your story in a way that's not catechism or Bible thumping. It's not judgmental. It's just your voice framed in your way based on your experience of discovering chastity. So did you, I'm trying to think of the way to jump into this, because no one else really does it the way you do it. People, they'll begin with a Bible verse, or they'll say the Catechism says this, and your MO is to say, let me tell you what happened to me.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, because that's the authority that I have is only my experience, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to share that and just help people understand that how someone like me with a story like mine could actually come back to the Catholic Church and find joy in it at the same time.
Right. Yeah. We have enough sour-faced, white-knuckled saints, don't we?
Enough.
Yeah, they're just warm in the pew, waiting for the fire insurance at death. Tell me a bit about your background, Hudson, your family. Were you from a strong Catholic home, and how did the tentacles of this gender dysphoria enter your life as a boy?
Sure. Definitely came from a Catholic home. We did all the Catholic things, and I know my parents did it as best they could in a world that it is the way today. And, they loved me and affirmed me in the ways of boy and value and stuff right from the get-go. And this whole thing began not, as I look back now, it wasn't because of something like that they did or said or weren't there or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I remember very distinctly having my attachment to boy, like what it meant to be a successful boy, being attached to the person of my brother, who I love dearly, and he never did anything about this either. It's just that
he's older.
Yeah, he's older, and he's stronger. So we played together all the time, and I was lost. Can you imagine that? Mm-hmm. And so years of compounding that, I remember, or as I look back now, I can see how I carved out the spot of second place, and I over time that devolved to believing that I wasn't good enough to be first, even though none of that came directly from my brother. I mean, we were two little boys playing, so it wasn't that it came from anything from my parents or my brother. I'm thinking that it came from how I internalized my place within the whole world of things. So
you adopted that identity of beta, of number two. I mean, literally in the Greek alphabet, alpha, beta. Yeah. Just not good enough to ever take the throne of power or the kind of a dominance position.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like my masculine confidence, if I could speak that word now, that was very low, and I continued to make choices where I would always place myself second, because even though I see now how that wasn't healthy, it's all I knew, and I knew it best, and it was comfortable. Yeah. And so obviously we know when something's comfortable, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. Sometimes we stay there, and I stayed there.
Were you bullied?
I don't think I was really bullied I was bullied in some. Hang on. In the schoolyard, I was not really bullied at all. But on the hockey in the hockey world, I did experience some bullying, and this is actually really important. The bullying that I experienced, I remember there was a point one day where I said, you know what, if this is what it means to be boy, to be this kind of vicious bully, which I want to know part of, I don't want anything to do with it. So it drew me to continue to distance myself from the boys. There's a lot of stuff at work here, but I want to say that because it wasn't like a bunch of things happened to me. I'm some kind of victim here. I made choices to push people away. for various reasons. I just didn't like that aggressiveness. I was conditioned to roll happy-go-lucky with things because it was more peaceful, and all that stuff, especially that bullying and stuff, and that constant fighting for the top and stuff, which I knew I could never be. I just wasn't into it. It didn't appeal to me, and oftentimes it was led to the traumas of some serious bullying that I experienced then.
I played competitive hockey for 10 years. Most Canadians, you and I are fellow Canadians, we can skate before we can walk. So, and the game is much more violent now than it was when I was growing up. I remember the NHL, the 6 original teams. Nobody wore helmets, not even the goalies. Nobody wore helmets. Nowadays, they practically, they're in like a hazmat suit with belt buckles and full facial gear. But hockey is a very fast way of separating the ones who are willing to endure great pain for a win versus the ones who let's just not the pain management thing. It's not, the algorithm doesn't fit. The equation is not worth it. And
don't get me wrong, I tried my best in hockey, and I actually played some pretty decent stuff. But tier 2 is all right, But when it came to the internal stuff, that's the sacred space of the dressing room, right? That's where things really shook out, and it wasn't a good place. It wasn't a good place for me.
Hudson, how old were you when you first looked at pornography?
I was exposed to it off an after-dinner TV show. I was 9 years old.
Magazine?
9 years old.
Video?
No, not till I was about 11, and I found a crumpled up paper on the street, and I was hoping it'd be porn, and guess what? It was actually porn, so that was the first time I saw it on paper.
And like most people who were exposed early, there's almost a super glue memory of it. It's kind of really branded into your mind. Is that the case with you? There's sort of a mixture of excitement and terror and shame and weirdness.
All of that. Yeah, I remember the first images like it was right now. Yeah. I mean, they're not in my mind right now, but I mean, I could recall them, right away.
So, I've interviewed Joseph Chambra many times, who went from the gay porn world to really occultic backdrop, and Joseph credits, quote unquote, pornography for making him gay because it destroyed taboos and barriers, and it kind of desensitized him to all manner of perversion. So slowly over time, I mean, look, human beings are complicated. There's not one cause for homosexual behavior or inclination. Human beings are very, in our dignity and in our fallenness, it's never just one thing. So I don't believe in looking for one magic bullet. But in your case, it seems to have been a combination of things. The really rough, kind of vicious treatment on the rink, even if it wasn't in the schoolyard, plus feeling like you didn't measure up to the strength and identity of your brother, and then you got the exposure to porn. At what point did you retreat into the world of girls and identify with more feminine things? And that led to what I was going to ask you about was the cross-dressing and it kind of wanting to wrap yourself in something girl-like than boy-like. Does this make sense? Yeah,
it does make sense. This is a lot of stuff to absorb in one question. So there was a lot of factors, even more so than the brother thing, and God bless him, and I love him, and we have a good relationship. So I don't hold anything, against anybody. Just how things turned out, and how I internalized things, and just off the cuff to get things right off the bat. This whole idea of taking some time to reflect on my past was actually an idea given to me by a gay activist, actually, who said to me that environment plays a factor in the development of our attractions. And this was at a teachers' conference in 2009 in a private conversation. And I couldn't believe I was hearing this from him. And it really made me want to look back and say, what were these key moments in my life? So there was the decreasing of masculine confidence with the playing. There was just several instances of that. Even one time we were watching a movie in class in grade 3, and there was a scary part, and I huddled into my friend who was a boy, and I remember feeling very safe in his chest, huddled into his chest. You get a kid to think about that and say, I wonder, how did that impact me? Because I do remember liking the feeling of being safe, but here I was feeling safe in the arms of a boy, right? So there's more factors in this that I came to conclude. That I realized in my past through this self-reflection. And I remember by grade 2, I was playing with the girls all the time. I just found it easier. It was less, it was more the kind of play that I wanted, which was more fun, less aggressive, simple as that. And maybe maybe it's because I didn't want to suffer the pain of always feeling like I could never win. I don't know why, but I found belonging with them. That's the key. I found belonging with them, and that kind of ruminated over time. And I had I had a good guy friend here and there, right? But then things hit in grade 6 where the cool kids kind of matured and I was still pining for their acceptance. Then things really, I remember that. I remember being in grade 6 and really still desiring their approval. I was desiring their approval. I was desiring to belong so badly. But around that time also, so I became awakened to the idea that maybe it would be nice to have someone special in your life, because when you're 11, how else do you phrase that? You're like, what are you looking for? And I remember the thought crossed my mind. It's like, well, maybe I'm supposed to have someone. Maybe I'm supposed to belong with the guys as like a relationship when I was that young. So these thoughts just kind of whittled in my head, and through high school and stuff, I kept bonding with the girls, spending more time with the girls, and you kind of become like who you hang out with a lot of times too. And so, I even picked up like the feminine accent and everything like that. But also at high school, around age 14 or 15 is when the cross-dressing began. And, I got my hands on some stuff. Okay. That's everybody's dirty secret starts with that, right? I got my hands on some stuff, and I just found it absolutely exhilarating, because I could take that idea that it belonged with the girls, and that, and by the way, some of my earliest memories were with wanting to be a girl or thinking I should be a girl. So this is not just a belonging thing and a trauma thing. It definitely was for me, though, in some ways.
And at that point, this is before people threw around the gay identity tag. You weren't thinking, "Oh, I'm gay," right? This is more subtle, or was it?
I wasn't thinking, "Oh, I'm trans," because people weren't talking about trans.
I'm certainly not trans. Yeah.
By age 11, so 91, I remember saying to myself, I'm gay, because I'd been using porn for 2 years already, and the ladies on the page weren't doing the trick anymore. I was like, I'm bored with this stuff, which is classic addiction behavior. Like you say, you need more or different. So I had already said to myself one time at that point that I'm gay. This is who I am, not fully understanding what it meant. But anyway, in my teens, so I'm doing this cross-dressing, and I'm getting captured in the fantasy of escaping myself. Okay, so for me now, like I don't speak for everybody who has this experience, but I do know that others like me exist, and I'm not alone. Because when I share my story, they come out of the woodwork and they say, "Thank you for giving a voice to my story." So I know that I'm not alone. But I went into this escapism by this. It allowed me to just shake off all the hurt, all the trauma of the experience that I had beforehand, growing up and thinking I was never good enough. I was never good enough, and that I could never measure up as a man based on these standards that I had, which were ridiculous, because I was basically trying to be someone I wasn't. I was trying to be my brother when I was younger, but I couldn't be my brother because he's my brother, right? Yeah. But I needed to figure out. I didn't realize at the time that I just had to be the best version of myself. It seems so simple, right? Yeah.
An imperfect version of you rather than a perfect fake of someone else, no matter how virtuous. Exactly. So I had this reprieve from this stress that I wasn't good enough. That also seemed to gel well with the earlier dreams that I might, maybe I should be a girl, right? And for me, that was a form of self-medicating from the pain, okay? Because it hurt. Not feeling like you're good enough hurts. Was the cross-dressing a kind of clothing or fashion equivalent of porn? In it being of a piece with the escapism and kind of shame-based arousal? Or to say maybe temporary release, temporarily feeling the safety that you felt on the chest of your male friend when you were a kid?
I would say for me, that's pretty close to it. And because there was an insight that I realized later on, because I cross-dressed for like 10 years, right? I went right through college, everything like that. And it was just that secret, you're terrified. Nobody can know, right? Yeah. And even right now with this, here we go. Okay, God, do something good with this, right? But it's, I remember having a moment of awakening while while doing this as an escape. And I realized that it was the tightness of the clothes, Patrick. The tightness of the clothes was a substitute hug, because I was hurting inside. I was hurting, and I needed to know that I was loved unconditionally. And a substitute hug that I could get from these tight-fitting clothes was like that substitute hug. It was the best thing I could get, because I certainly wasn't going to go out and tell someone my story and get a hug in that moment. I was scared. I was scared. And that gave me that hug to give me a fake sense of peace through that, I guess, just to help me make it through the day, I guess.
I never thought about that. The idea of if the clothing's baggy, then it doesn't replicate what snuggling up with someone or feeling like embraced. When you're describing the warming up to your friend during the scary movie, I was thinking about the role of the father. Did you have any memories of being in your dad's lap or on his chest and feeling protected by him? Because it sounds, based on what you're sharing now, Hudson, that this the cross-dressing made you identify with the world of women, which I'm thinking would also incline you to want to find solace in the arms of a man as a kind of eroticized relationship that should have been there with your father in a kind of a natural father-son relationship.
Right.
See where I'm going?
Yeah, I see where you're going, because that kind of fits a classical model of reasons for some people. I, on the other hand, I remember having those moments of fulfillment with my dad. I remember spending lots of time with my dad. Like I said, for me earlier, it was that I had my idea of being a man, successful boy, pegged on being this athletic superstar that was my brother. And because I'm not my brother, I could never hit it, right? Yeah. So that's what I mean. Like, those models do work on some people's story, but I don't see it as the same. I don't see it as a good match on mine, you know. And while sorry, what was the part of it? I kind of lost. Could you repeat part of the question there?
Yeah, I was sort of it was two-pronged. It was two-pronged. One, I was wondering if you had a similar memory of feeling secure on your father's chest or in his lap and feeling secure and protected, and if you didn't, was the cross-dressing a function, rather the other way around? Did the cross-dressing further incline you toward homosexuality, which kind of eroticized a male-male friendship, where it may not have had you had a more salient experience, and maybe many of them with your dad? Again, I'm not trying to reduce it down to one thing. It's not. It's complicated.
No, I understand. So the cross-dressing started when I was, like I said, like 15 or 14. And by then I had been addicted to porn since I was 9. So I was very, very deeply mired in shame. So I was very closed in. I wasn't really letting anyone close to me. And so at that time, the cross-dressing was just a furthering of the shame, that just a further manifestation or my outlet of the deep shame that I was experiencing, that I internalized as my teens. Yeah. So that's, I would connect it to that. It was just a further escape, because I mean, I was running. I was upset with myself that I didn't have the self-control to not look at porn, right? And I was disappointed with myself, and I got down on myself, and that also led to lower masculine confidence. But you know, when you're running from facing yourself, you go to further and further extents, and I would say the cross-dressing ended up being one of those further extents for me. The second part of the question, did it further incline me to the going down the homosexual roads? I would say absolutely yes, because the further that I embodied the feminine, the further I wondered, maybe this is supposed to be who I am. Maybe I should be with a guy. Like, everything seems to fit, you know? And when I was in my teens also, that's when I got molested by this guy, and I was scared, and yet I'm having a reaction down there, eh? So what does a guy think that when that's happening and you're a teenager, it's like a double confirmation. Oh my God, I really am gay. So you got that going on. You got, and I was 11.
Quick press pause. Teenager, closer to 14 or closer to 19?
Closer to 19.
Okay. So someone groomed you or seduced you or kind of took you aside and And
No,
basically,
neither. It was a massage therapist or a therapist. You know, and I didn't know any better, right?
Right.
I mean, I knew something was up, but then I just went into freeze mode, fight, flight, freeze. I was like,
right.
what's going on? And it was only molestation, but that still can, man, I've had trust issues ever since then. I'm working on still, you know, like.
Right. Did you meet with other people who cross-dress? I mean, this is not exactly when the internet is in full crazy alert, but did you connect with other people who were doing this to kind of feel that maybe you weren't such an alien?
The desire was there to do that. And so back in the day, there was Yahoo groups, things like that. You kind of look around and see, okay, these people are kind of into the same things as me, you know. And of course, at this time, I didn't even think there was anything I needed to, like, you know, think about in my life. I just was going with it, right?
Yeah.
And so, I would not, like, connect and type, really, but just kind of know, okay, I'm not alone. Because that was the biggest thing, is like, oh, my God, I'm the only one. I'm the only one who's ever felt like he's not good enough, and it, you know, or felt like he doesn't measure up to being a boy. Oh my gosh, today, oh dear, you know, how many people don't feel like they measure up to being a man or a woman because of these unrealistic standards of our society pushes on them, you know?
Well, or how about we don't even know what the standard is now?
Oh, there you go.
The humorist Dave Barry, I think, has a book called The Rise of the Guy. There are very few Gary Cooper, Edward G. Robinson, John Wayne types, just from a cultural, you know, masculine icon. Now we have guys. Now we have Seinfeld, and we have Matt Damon, and we have Jimmy Kimmel, they're guys. You know, they're the extension of adolescence. You know, a lot of Peter Panism. Did you feel like Peter Pan growing up, that you're just not really equipped for adult male life and identity and mission? Was that part of it? Can you identify with the Peter Pan thing?
In ways, yeah. Okay, so I didn't realize there was an issue until someone pointed out at my Facebook page that it was like 99% girls and like only a couple of guys. I went back and looked, and sure enough, this is 2007. So 10 years, you know, long time passed since the molestation and trust issues booming out of nowhere here. All the guys, except for like a couple on my Facebook page, were from before the incident. So I just realized that it took, for over 10 years, I was incapable of making an actual male-to-male healthy relationship. And I knew something was wrong, and I was nowhere near the church at the time, but I was like, something is up with that. Yeah. And then I took a hug from somebody, a guy, in an appropriate place, an appropriate setting, you know, whatever. And I realized I didn't know how to hug him back. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? Like, who doesn't know how to hug? You know, a lot of people don't know how to hug, but I in my way, I realized that this isn't right. I could hug my dad and my brother, no problem, because I knew them my whole life, right? But to like a new guy, I was like, what is this? You know, it didn't feel right. So I knew I had to look into myself and see like what's going on. Yep.
Did your the cross-dressing thing and how that was in a way an outgrowth of your porn addiction and the shame and identifying with the world of girls and not identifying very deliberately with the world of boys, did you ever angle close to the decision, or did the idea ever enter your mind, maybe I am more female? Did you think about the operation? You know, just sort of extending the logic out. How far did that go to thinking maybe I'm actually transgender?
Sure. Okay, well, back in the day, transgender wasn't being talked about. So
they were like there was only a couple of them, right? You've got Renee Richards and a few high-profile. This is people have to understand the Caitlyn Jenner thing, which is a media construct mostly, is a brand new thing. You know, 70s, 80s, 90s. This whole transgender confusion was beyond the beyond. So anyway, I'm talking too much. Go ahead.
Okay. So for me, I really basically developed tunnel vision on anything I could do to stay away from facing myself and my lack of confidence, because that was terrifying. I had learned through my time coming home to the church and stuff that we have to face ourselves and face truths, and sometimes those truths are not comfortable. Yeah. And I was terrified. And so I see now how deeply I was fixated with tunnel vision on anything to get me away from that. And I became fixated on cross-dressing and the fantasy of cross-dressing, but I still managed it like it was a secret life. You know what I mean? So I was able to function with that as a management thing, but it was really, again, like I said, self-medicating in my case, and I can see that very clearly now. That's what it was, but I kept going down that road. And I do remember, Google searching or looking at, like, I wonder what it would be like, to do that, to go for the surgery, like, like some of them, like not the whole way. I never thought of that. That never went that far in my mind. And the question that was going through my mind would this make me happy? Right. And I realized kind of at the same time that I needed to be happy for myself. Like I remember later on someone said, if it doesn't matter where you move, right? All your issues and stuff comes with you. If you're happy and you move somewhere, you'll be happy there. If you're sad and you move there, you'll be sad, because that starts with you inside.
Yeah. No matter where you go, there you are.
That's right. And I'd already come to terms with realizing that a lot of things I would do, I'm going to do the next step or the next step and the next step to think I'd be happy, but it would never give me that happiness that I really wanted long term. So I was able to apply that to this decision with, doing a surgery or something like that. Like I did consider it, but I was like, that's a big leap. And as much as I'm thinking that, I probably fit in this way and I could probably live, maybe I could live a happy life this way, or, I'm trying to tell myself that because it's my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. I just couldn't do it, but I did think about it.
Well, all those strategies you're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hudson, they sound like failed strategies to be happy. You weren't doing them to be evil. You weren't doing them to disrupt the natural moral order. You were you were trying to be satisfied, even if satisfaction meant getting rid of the angst and the shame. I often say to people, there's a line from G.K. Chesterton. I think it's Chesterton, possibly C.S. Lewis. The man who knocks on the door of a brothel is looking for God. The woman who's going into the abortion clinic is trying to be happy, as crazy as that sounds, even if happy means getting rid of the fear and the trauma and the terrible feelings of what's this decision going to do if I don't go into this abortion clinic and so on. Because we know through classic philosophy and the teaching of Scripture that evil is not a substance. It's not a blob. Oh, look, evil, I'm going to go get that. It's a lack of a do-good. So this is a nice segue, by the way, to your approach now as a speaker and as a teacher. But before we get there, what was the inbreak of grace? How did you get rescued? How did clarity and light and peace come to you? Were you at the bottom of a well? Was it just a sovereign act of Jesus Christ where you knew the truth? And how did you get from there to where you are now in the bosom of the church as a leader?
Thanks for that. I remember one instance very clearly, and I was crying out in my heart for truth. And the reason is because I was so beat up by the cycle of life, and stuck in the hookup culture. I was in the hookup culture trying to prove that I was straight, of course, because that's what a lot of guys are doing, sadly. Not all, but lots. And it's like, I wonder how am I going to do this? And inside this hookup culture, which was always empty, and then also realizing that it was getting harder and harder to outrun the past that I could see becoming, that I would have to face. I'd have to face myself. It was getting harder to run. And I remember being just surrounded by these opinions of this and that, and I was just like, enough of already, because I followed the worldly opinions, and it brought me to that state which was rock bottom of rock bottoms. And I remember crying out with my heart and saying, I just want to know what's true. And that began in the year 2007 or 7, I believe, is when it really began. I just needed to know what was true, and I just started pursuing, and that meshed well with my love of mathematics. But I mean, I wanted to know what was true, and then I started pursuing truth. I mean, until then, I didn't know anything about the church, except for what I learned in Sunday Mass, which was good, and my catechesis in Catholic Canadian schools.
Yeah. So you were like a mechanical Mike. You ticked the box. Yeah, I got my sacraments, went to Mass, but it didn't didn't marinate inside. It didn't land with you.
I didn't even know what I didn't know. You know?
Right. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So did you make a good confession? Was it a sacramental beginning back to the church? Was it a prayer group? Was it a book? Was it a wise person came alongside you and told you what's what?
It was a lot of that. So one, I had a priest from the pulpit actually speak towards homosexuality in 2007, and he said there's more for us to know. And so I was like, wait a second, this is like a window of hope, because I don't want this to be me, even though I saw myself in it. So I went and started learning as much as I could. That's one thing. At the same time, I encountered an awesome group of Catholic men who walked with me. They received me where I was, and they just walked with me. And I didn't tell them everything. I mean, I was terrified. But they walked with me and showed me what holiness was, and they showed me the peace. They had a peace that I just totally loved, Patrick. There's so many things. And I mean, this was like a jet turning around for years, right? And then just continuing to learn, and having good leadership and everything. The confession.
Right. Yeah, it's all
the big one.
Right. The big the Kleenex alert one.
The big one.
Coming home one. I hope that priests listening and deacons listening right now take note of what you just said, that it was in a public homily. It was not a sort of sotto voce at the back of the church. Here, look at this trifold literature. From the pulpit, talking about the vision of the Bible and the church on homosexuality. I have never heard that mentioned. As a lifelong Catholic, not one mention of same-sex attraction in any form. In fact, sometimes I remember readings being skipped over because the priest just didn't want to deal with it. But it resonated with you. It was what you needed to hear.
It was beautiful. And
it was hope-filled. You didn't feel judged, right?
Not at all. Nope. No, just it was an invitation to actually learn about it. And I mean, to that point in life, I never had been invited to learn about it. And it's a great invitation to give. There was only about 7 people in church. It was a northern church, right? But he just had Father Joseph. I think he was following the route of the Holy Spirit there.
That's a good name for a priest for your homecoming, Father Joseph.
Oh, beautiful. Yes.
Briefly, this might get a little too Romanist for my Protestant listeners. Your relationship with St. Joseph. Why is St. Joseph a tremendous model for Christian men?
Well, how I see it as is just like a restoration of masculinity, obedience, the scary O word, right? But being obedient, being humble, and basically being quiet and taking action when you need to act, and knowing that true manliness isn't about, the muscle or the man bun.
Yeah. Let's have a moment. Can we have a moment of silence now for the man bun? It's
please,
it's really a cry for help, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not going to go there. But it's not about some look. It's about the interior disposition of the heart, right? And it's about, are you ready to serve? I've realized are you ready to give your life to the Lord and serve as He's calling? And I just am so motivated by his example of just quiet service, but it's powerful service.
Talk about the strong silent type, right? Doesn't say a word in Scripture. Yeah, I've often complained that bad Christian art about St. Joseph has kind of undermined our devotion to him. We think of St. Joseph as like a holy card 95-year-old holding a flower, right? As opposed to someone more like Russell Crowe, who can stare down a brigand on the road from Israel to Egypt.
He took care of Mary and Jesus. I mean, what a greater honor, right? I would love to strive to embody what he was.
That'd be intimidating to be St. Joseph around the breakfast table at Nazareth, wouldn't it? You're the only sinner at the table.
Only sinner. A little bit.
Now, I wanted to ask you about the theology of the body and how you've incorporated the teaching of St. John Paul II as a kind of antidote to the sexual revolution and its lies. How do you understand the theology of the body, and how do you communicate it to groups and people that you minister to?
Okay. So, again, I just speak through my story because that's what I can give. I don't have a certification in as a theology instructor or anything like that. But I do know that along my journey to deepening self-honesty, I recognize that who am I first was the question I had to ask, right? The first thing, now everybody's familiar with attractions are distinct from identity. Like 10 years ago, people weren't talking about that, but now it's commonplace, which is great. The next question after that is, what identity reflects the truth, the greatest degree of truth of my being? So this is just part of my journey, and I rationalized, like, well, you know, being a beloved child of God encompasses everything, right? It's like, you know, it's broad enough, and it also properly orders the relationship with God to be first. I'm not like a gay person or a trans person or a straight person. I'm a person who's a beloved child of God who experiences whatever, or who used to experience whatever. So it was about the idea of having God first. I came to that, and then people were telling me, hey, that's in line with theology of the body. So I had to learn a little more about that. Right, so I came to it, and I know the Holy Spirit was involved in that because he was drawing me to the deeper self-honesty, which converged with that. And so if I'm going to share my story or to draw people that, I found that you can't, like you said about smacking someone with the catechism or something, it's not exactly effective.
It's fun, though. It can be fun.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine trying to share my story, though, and just saying, like, you know, would you just please walk with me through the truth that I encountered and just, you know, pray about them? Because, I mean, I found peace and I found joy and belonging and the answer to the anxieties that I had. And I have a home in the Catholic Church on the road to holiness and peace. And I know that, you know, pursuing a heart of virtue. And I experienced a joy that I never, ever experienced before. And I really want the whole world to be able to taste that joy.
How would you finish this sentence? To me, chastity is
a fruit of temperance.
The fruit of temperance. Okay.
I just learned that like the other day.
All right. How about this, Hudson? How would you finish this sentence? To me, temperance is... We'll just do a Thomas Aquinas infinite regress.
Yeah, we'll go right to the beginning.
Because people identify chastity with something that's absolutely unreachable. It's an ideal only for the elite, only for the super holy, for the extraordinary Christian who's able to, you know, leap tall buildings and is afraid of kryptonite. But it seems to me that your major premise is that chastity is the call of everybody. We're made to hear this message.
Everybody.
I was very blessed to be the spiritual directee of the late Father John McGoey. And Father McGoey is a great, great man, a Scarborough Foreign mission priest. I was one of his pallbearers when he died in 1995. And he famously said that chastity is to the sexual sphere what a bank account is to finance. A budget is to finance. In other words, it's not prudishness. You're not squashing your sexual desires. God put them there. This is true for the celibate and for the married and for the single. We're supposed to have the desire for the opposite sex. That's a sign of something going right. The question is, what do you do with it, and how do you harness it? How do you bridle it? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
BRIDLE, like horse, not with the white veil.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I
figured that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Chastity. I mean, that's to do with the state of the heart. It's not the same as abstinence, and it's not the same as celibacy. So clarity is always good. Mm-hmm. And I just found that in my journey, I found that the more I pursued a heart of chastity, the easier it was to pursue that. It doesn't mean that I was perfectly clear in terms of behavior, because I've fallen a lot of times. I'll probably fall until I'm a human being. I'll always fall until, but I'm coming back through confession and stuff and getting better and getting better. That's what it is. I'm getting better at choosing the heart of virtue. And that's the point, is that it's not focused on the white-knuckled ride of behavior management. Oh, I'm an awful person. I can't be this perfectly behaved person. Nobody can. So I got off of that whole ride together. Instead, I'm looking at, wait a second, if I fall, it's up to me to say, all right, Lord, here I am coming back to you. And there's great joy in that, because that's always my decision. Yeah. I'm one decision away of coming back to Christ every time. Right. That's powerful. That's empowering, right? I'm not some victim of, crappy decision making and all this. It's just like, no, I can get back up and go back to God and pursue a heart of chastity again. And it's total freedom away from that bitter ride of behavior management. I don't play that ride anymore. And it feels great.
Our mutual friend Jason Everett has a great image of a warrior who's fallen. There's no shame in falling in battle. the problem is when you just leave the battlefield altogether. You just go home and don't get back in it. Because a generation of men are raised with a kind of perfectionism, all or nothing. And so the perfect becomes the enemy of the good. And isn't the gospel, it's all laid out in St. Paul in his letter to the Romans. Imagine someone really good, really heroically good. You might give your life for that person because of the honor that they're due. But what proves that Christ loves us is that he died for us while we were still sinners. In other words, we contributed nothing to the equation, which means it's more important to be loved than to love, to receive it first. Hudson, you will walk up to like a gay pride rally. You want to hear the people that are on the quote the other side. That must be disarming for them. That you're not holding a placard. It's a catechism-free zone in the thumping department. Why is it important to listen, to really listen with the heart to what people are saying, rather than assume, I know what like you got purple hair and you're tatted and you're wearing a bra in public. I know everything about you. Why is it important to listen?
Right. Well, I've never met someone who loves assumptions being made about them. Have you?
Mm-hmm.
Never.
You're right.
And at the end of the day, and this is really powerful. I mean, it's not coming from me. Like, hopefully this can be just for us to pray about for God, is that at the end of the day, we're always dealing with real people with real hearts, is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. Real people with real hearts. And that person is someone's son or brother or daughter or whatever. And just imagine if they aren't lit with a little bit of a flame to taste the water that you're drinking, the water of eternal life, then could you be doing something better? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Are you being incense for Christ, or are you the stink of judgmentalism? That's
really good way of putting it.
I'm just a word factory today. You bring it out of me.
And so that's the big thing, is real people, real hearts. But I mean, also to caution that some people will go down the road of a compassion, a misplaced compassion, and walk with someone anywhere, right?
Just accompany them right off a cliff.
Well, that's counters the definition of accompaniment, as far as I understand.
Yeah.
Accompaniment in the eyes of the church would include always towards increasing virtue. So if to walk with someone off a cliff or to walk someone into a dark place, that's no longer accompaniment. And now we actually become accomplices of such to a person's acts of sin. And we have to answer for that.
Yeah, right. And our deliberate enabling, because we don't want to confront the person with truth, which leads us back to the sense of balance and the golden thread of Catholicism, both and, love and truth. If you only have love without truth, you've got sappy sentimentalism, right? And this enablement, which doesn't go anywhere. If you have truth without love, then you're just a Pharisee. Your job is to point out the faults of others and ignore the beam in your own eye.
Right, and to add to that is that these conversations that can occur about, talking when listening. I shouldn't say dealing with, because that's not what I mean. I mean just listening to people with real hearts, real people with real hearts, is that it can happen. Relationship can be built. Yep. And I know that draws a lot of people out of comfort, but if you don't have a relationship with someone, why would they ever listen to anything you might have to offer? Mm-hmm. So, and it's hard, because then that makes us have to confront things that we might not be ready to confront, like how I may be judgmental in some ways, and it's a very humbling process, but listening is so important.
Over time, did you find that you are attracted to girls and able to step across that abyss and ask a girl out and have a woman really love you?
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't ask about how successful I was with that, but
no, I'm just talking openness.
I'm just kidding. So as I began to grow back towards the faith and really begin to practice the pursuit of virtue, and chastity mainly is the one I knew about. I know there's many virtues. I'm still learning tons. Mm-hmm.
Me too.
Yeah, there's so much. I began to realize through good wisdom from other speakers that I need to have self-control, temperance in many things, and that'll help me with pursuing a heart of chastity. And over time and practice, I became, by the grace of God, became better at self-control. And with that, and this was a surprise effect, the surprise after effect was that I became more confident in myself as a person, as a man, actually. Because there came a point where I just kind of stopped the transgender dream a bit because I wasn't willing to go the distance.
Yeah.
But I still was very attracted to the idea and stuff, right? But anyway, so I'm gaining self-control, and then I'm gaining my masculine confidence back as a surprise after effect. And as my masculine confidence increased, the same sex as I gained my control of pursuing chastity by the grace of God, the desire to pursue unchaste pursuits went down. Okay.
Just kind of lost his grip on you.
Yeah. Well, it didn't lose its grip on me, but it went down a bit. But okay, so the desire to lust went down, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Right. Okay. So as lust went down, this was the first thing that happened. As lust went down, I noticed as an after effect that my same-sex sexual attractions also decreased. And I was like, wait a second. And then I noticed through that, I realized from that is that, wait a second, my same-sex sexual attractions were connected to lust for me. Then after I had that gained in self-control and gaining my masculine confidence, I'm realizing, hey, I don't really feel like I need a man in my life to give me the pieces of humanity that I'm missing.
Right.
I am becoming the man that I want to be instead of projecting that need onto someone else. So my masculine confidence went up and my same-sex romantic attractions diminished.
Yeah, and I have to think that has something to do with your relationship with Christ too, as best friend, as manly best friend.
It was he's totally at the center of this all because he's giving me the power he's not giving that. How do I say this properly? It's because of him that I'm most motivated to pursue that heart of virtue and that self-control, and it's for him. And he's the one who's giving me all the strength to do it at the same time.
Yeah.
And then so as that masculine confidence was going up, so too did the transgender inclinations and all that stuff go down. All that stuff went down. All of these things were surprise after effects that I didn't anticipate at the beginning. I just knew that I had to stop. I knew that I wanted to break away from porn. I knew that I wanted to break away from this cycle of unchaste pursuits.
Yeah.
And these were the after effects for me. And I hear for other people it's similar, but also for many other people it's not. And God just says, here's a cross, here's some strength to continue to carry it. So
but you hold out hope someday.
Totally.
Yeah. Because some people, their idea of chastity is the white knuckle model, right? As long as I'm just being chaste, God is not going to change my inclination to love, to be attracted to women sexually. You have not shut the door to that. Because as the negative data or the negative compulsions on the same-sex side diminish, well, duh, you still have desires, and maybe they can be reoriented. But I like that you're honest enough to not want to come to some glib conclusions beforehand. Hudson, my gosh, this is the fastest 45 minutes I've had in a long, long time. Did you have a final thought?
Yeah, I did. Just real quick here. And this idea of the transformation of heart and an orientation, I'm oriented towards holiness, and that's what I'm aiming for. And just to put it out there, the church never said to me, you need to change from gay to straight. And as I dug into it, I realized the church doesn't stand for that anyway. So this was just the natural fallout of just pursuing a heart of virtue in my case, right? That's all it was. It's pursuing holiness first.
Well, the website is hudsonbyblow.com. It's Hudson like the bay. Byblow is B-Y-B-L-O-W, B-Y-B-L-O-W.com. You can find out where Hudson is speaking this year and the next year. You've got speaking gigs lined up all the time. You can check out his video presentation on Ascension Press, and I guess you've got something in the pipeline with our mutual friend Jason Everett. So lots going on. You'll get on an airplane, go pretty much anywhere, right?
Anywhere you need me to go.
Okay. Good. I have a big stack of laundry. Can you just help us out?
Is it warmer than here?
Yeah, someone has to brave the 60-degree winters. Sorry to rub it in your face, brother.
Right.
Hudson, the subtitle says it all, Engage in the Pursuit of Truth. I really appreciate your time and your transparent honesty. It's a gift. Keep it up.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
All right. This is The Patrick Coffin Show. One more guest, Ryan T. Anderson, author of When Harry Became Sally. This is The Patrick Coffin Show. Be a saint. What else is there?